going on, you guys? My name is Rayge, and we are back today with an exciting video here breaking down the escape from Kiln. But as well, we're going to be talking about what's going to be reasonable and what's feasible for those that are free to play, those newer into the game, transitioning to mid game, and even if you're in the end game, what is a reasonable mark for us to be aiming for based on this new game mode that is going to be coming live in a couple of days. So let's get right to it. First and foremost, if you guys haven't seen it, this is available on the blog post, but Kiln is a new game mode, right? This is essentially containing 40 of the prison cells that you have to battle through in order to escape. The difference in this mechanic is that this is going to be the first time where they introduce 3 character squads, essentially just having a team of a max of 3 members, and you do need to be level 65 and above to be able to participate. And then as well, it's going to be a couple of rules that are actually pretty similar to Scourge, right? As you can see, if you guys have done the legendary trial events and Scourge in the past, this is going to be very, very similar in terms of that dynamic of working your way through it. There's no cooldown period after each battle, so it's not like Dark Dimension where if you do, fail, you have to wait the next day to reattempt. It doesn't work like that. The health and abilities do carry forward, so any enemies that fall, any allies that fall during previous stages, they're not going to be able to be revived or healed onto the next node. And then as well, you do remain in the same cell after losing a battle. So we've seen that especially in the Scourge and Trials where you can utilize different teams, right? Restarting a run will also drop you down to 4-1, heal your characters, and reset your score. Very similar to, again, the Scourge and Legendary Trials. And then after completing a cell, that is when you're going to be earning the milestone reward. So from what we could see, and big shout out to Dorky Dad's video. I'll link it below, guys, if you want to see the actual gameplay and footage, because that's really what formulated the bulk of my research and findings here, is that you can see with each completion of cell, it's going to essentially earn a milestone. So 40 cells, 40 milestones. Pretty simple stuff, right? Now, onto the breakdown of each of the cells respectively and what to expect for each node. So we got cells 1 to 19, which I honestly think is going to be the bulk newer players, to those in the mid game and maybe early end games. Cells 1 to 19 aren't too bad, right? The first 4 cells, you really do want to be focusing on the non-restriction characters. So preparing characters with cooldowns that are heavy, that can be very valuable later on if they can get their ultimate from turn 1. So characters like Val, Omega Red, Dr. Doom, any of the horsemen, I think are really valuable, and they're really, really weak. You likely will be able to fly through these nodes as they're really just an introduction into the escape from Kiln. Next up, we have cells 5 to 7 requiring Guardian or Infinity Watch characters. The enemies each only have 35 to 40k in total combat power, so pretty easy. That would mean that if you obviously have 3 characters at 40k, totaling 120 on your team, you're gonna be able to get the job done. Most folks will likely have these characters built up. Then we have cells 8 to 10 for Avengers, and then as well going all the way from 11 to 13 to Global Skill, and then 14 to 16 are City Mystic. Typically we saw the range of enemies to be between 35 to 83k. Still not bad. That means if you have 3 characters on your team that total about 240k, that's the rough benchmark 1-to-1. You'll be able to punch down at least, or punch up slightly, but you shouldn't have any issues in these initial nodes as it's more of an introduction. But again, you do need to have some of these wider traits in case you don't have them built up. But the good news is some of these traits have already been used in previous Legendary Horseman Scourge events and trials, so it's nice that we can double dip there. And then we have where I believe that there's a significant ramp up in difficulty. Cells 17 and 19 requiring Asgardian characters. And now this is quite a jump from the 83k mark all the way to basically doubling it almost, right? So I think 17 and 19 using Asgardians, but keep in mind Asgardians, many of them can include the Bifrost team that's been introduced into the game. So it depends if you have these characters built up. If you do, Val is obviously a big one for that. Any of the Bifrost members, Barry, Bill, Sylvie, and so forth. In summary, first 19 cells, not too shabby, not bad, no gear tier requirements. Many folks should be able to hit. Maybe that 17 and 19 you might need some slight investment in, so that way you can match the enemies that we're up against. Next up, cells 20 to 29, and I do believe this is probably going to be where the bulk of the end game players will lie, unless they want to do some further investments, and I'll go through why. But you can see here, cells 20 to 22. There's about 190k total combat power enemies, and you do need gear tier 15, and this requires either Spider-Verse tech or Spider-Verse skill. So it does eliminate some of the characters that we can utilize, right? Obviously for just the Spider-Verse broad tag, but Superior 6 is a really good category to include here, because you can see, Doc Ock, Green Goblin, they would be Spider-Verse tech. And they would have immense value and be able to synergize in those nodes. The enemies are higher, like I said, and do require gear tier 15, so you may need some of these characters built up, which can be already a bottleneck in itself. Next up, the Global Mystic is required at gear tier 15 for 23 and 24. The enemies are still in that similar range, 190k, and some strong notable mentions: Quicksilver, Morgan Le Fay, Agatha Harkness synergies there with the fellow Darkhold member. They got Doctor Doom if you prepped them from the earlier nodes. And then I think Spider Weaver is a really good one too. I think the synergy of any three of these characters are going to do really well, especially with many of them being in the meta. 26 to 28 is Villain Mutants at gear tier 16. Oh, sorry, and number 25, you do need gear tier 16, so you can do 23 and 24 at 15, but they do jump from Global Mystic gear tier 15 to 16 on that one node, so just something to be mindful of if you guys haven't built that up. But 26 to 28, Villain Mutants at gear tier 16. This would include some very powerful villain enemies in the game. That includes Apocalypse, we got Omega Red, Archangel, Dark Beast, Nemesis, all respective members of the Dev Seed team, the OG mutant raids for Incursion. So overall, guys, there's a lot of good synergies that we can utilize here, which I don't think players will have an issue, especially if you already built up the Horseman teams. I think this is where that hotspot will be to really showcase your roster. And then following that, we have Cell 29, Hero Tech at gear tier 16. So an obvious one here is the Pegasus team. And if you have them already built up for the Incursion raids, this is going to be absolutely no issue whatsoever. Even if we're up against enemies that are 200k, you likely will have a gear tier 18 Kestro, and she's just going to be able to walk over these nodes, especially if you have any synergies with Pegasus here. So in summary, guys, I do strongly believe cells 20 to 29 are going to be the cells that separate the folks with the wide versus the quality rosters, just because of the fact that you do need to spread out some of these traits more. And again, you're requiring more of these end game meta characters in the Horseman raid teams, such as Pegasus. Even characters like 26 to 28 is going to be a cakewalk with Apocalypse, but again, still doable if you don't have Apocalypse. It's just more so it's going to be even easier. But I think this is the benchmark where it lies between the well-invested rosters of the end game versus end game that's comfortable in min-maxing certain teams and synergies. So lastly, obviously, we're going to wrap things up here with cells 30 to 40, and this is going to be the hardest cells that we have to go through in order to maximize all the rewards, right? So even from the get-go, cells 30 to 31, you need the same trait as before, which is Herald Tech, likely Pegasus being the answer there, but you do need them at gear tier 17. Now, personally, guys, if you've been following my videos and my Incursion rates, I think I did one where they were less than 1 million power just to get through the new Incursion 2 raids. The majority of my Pegasus characters are actually at gear tier 14 and 15. So for me to be even able to participate in these cells, I'm going to have to bring them up to level 90 and gear tier 17 them. And to be honest, I don't know if I'm going to do that, just because this is only one event. We don't know if this is going to be recurring. And also more on the rewards later, so I can talk to you about the obviously the cost benefit of doing this, right? But overall, Pegasus is likely going to be the only answer here, so you need them at gear tier 17 if you haven't. Next up, similar format, we got X-Men team though. This is going to be a range of enemies actually from 200 to 320k, which can be very, very notable at gear tier 17. But obviously here, the Extreme X-Men are going to be the go-to team. I think Rogue can also be a very great slotting character at times, but if you don't have the new Extreme X-Men team built up, it's going to be a little challenging, a little more difficult with the older teams such as Unlimited. But I think they can still get the job done if you have them at 17 or 18. But Extreme is going to be, especially characters like Nightcrawler and Forge, they're going to be able to shine, especially for these cells. 35 to 37, requiring legendary characters at gear tier 18. Now, most folks likely would have been able to use their Dark Dimension 6 characters at this point and at this stage, but they slotted this in at the last section of the cell. So unfortunately, we won't be able to access that because I do have 5 characters at gear tier 18 for legendary. But you have to, in order to get here, you need to get the Herald Tech and Extreme X-Men upgraded to gear tier 17 at the bare minimum. But you can see this is where, you know, the hardest section start. 300 to 320k enemies, and characters like Black Cat, Nova, Green Goblin Classic, any of the Horsemen are great options to utilize. And then lastly, that brings us to the final 3 notes here, being Villain Bio. And of course, it's Villain Bio because it gives you that exclusive featuring, being able to utilize Scroll. As you can see, 350k plus enemies. Gear tier 18 is required. And as well, this is where it's kind of harder, right? Super Scroll is obviously going to be the shining cornerstone of this team here, but then you don't really get a lot of great options. We see Zombie Iron Man being feasible. Dorky Dad utilized both Moonstone and Titania, which I thought were great ideas just because they are some of the better Villain Bio characters. But do you really want to be bringing them to gear tier 18? You know, I think that's going to be kind of the big decider here. But having said that, guys, personally, I don't have my Pegasus at gear tier 17, so I am likely actually stopping at the cell 29 mark at gear tier 16 for Herald Tech. That's my game plan, just to maximize. But now on to kind of the considerations of what you should be taking a look at before you decide how far you want to go. Is what is the ultimate reward at the end, right? We need to consider the cost and benefit of investing in some of these characters and teams just in order to proceed with the milestones, right? So as you can see on the screenshot, this was from Dorky Dad's video again. It gives you access to a 3 diamond of Gambit. Some notable shards, you know, we got 5 million gold, which isn't terrible, but again, you need to do the last and final node just in order to hit that. But even before that, there's some pretty good portions of mutant gear for 38 and 39, so definitely something to consider for sure. But is this worth the investment of bringing my Extreme X-Men to gear tier 17 in addition to Pegasus? I don't know if it is, to be honest, especially in a free-to-play account like myself. I am always thinking about, you know, the long-term and min-maxing, and I don't know if this is a great use of my resources, especially if it's just for a free diamond of Gambit, which likely will be available in some way, shape, or form in the future anyways. So cells 1 to 16, guys, just to recap, is likely going to be that safe choice for newer to mid-game players. 17 to 29 is going to be for many and the majority of endgame folks, those that are really choosing to decide and invest in on these teams and which ones they want to proceed with. And then lastly, cells 30 to 40 are the end game with ready and built up rosters, those that already have invested those teams and characters. By all means, this is essentially going to be some free rewards for you guys, but I'll capture as much as I can. I probably will only be able to get gameplay footage up until 29, but I'll obviously keep you guys up to date, and if anything develops with the rewards and so forth, I'll keep you posted. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in comments below, what you believe is going to be good for a good choice to stop at or what to invest in. But guys, remember, just to have fun too. This is a really cool game mode where it's the first time we're seeing this kind of theory crafting with 3 characters on a team. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Sounds super exciting to just dive into. And yeah, I'll keep you guys up to date. Thank you as always. Hope you guys have a lovely rest of the day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.